My best friend of 10 years stole $15,000 from me, and I didn't find out until the wedding. That line is something I've said out loud exactly twice in my life, once to my closest friend, and once to a therapist. Now I'm saying it to you, because I think someone out there needs to hear how this unfolded. All of it. The parts I'm proud of and the parts I'm still processing. Let me take you back to the beginning, because the context is everything. I came home early because of a headache and the house was supposed to be empty. That's when I found out. Not because I went looking. Because some things stop being hidden not when you start searching, but when you finally stop letting yourself look away. I want to be careful here, because I'm not going to turn this into a villain story. People are complicated. Motivations are rarely simple. But what happened to me was not a misunderstanding, and it was not an accident. That's the part one need you to understand before I tell you the rest. Let me go back even further. I had known Monica for a long time. Long enough to know their coffee order and their biggest insecurity and the exact face they make when they're pretending to be fine. We were close in that specific way where you don't even question the relationship anymore, you've just absorbed each other into the architecture of your daily life, and you stop noticing. That's the vulnerability, by the way. The not noticing. I was not paranoid. I was not insecure. I was not looking for problems. I had a full life and a million things to think about, which meant that when things started to feel slightly wrong, my first instinct was always to find an innocent explanation. And I was good at that. I'd been doing it for years without realizing it. I noticed something strange about 6 weeks in. A small inconsistency. The kind of thing you'd have to be paying close attention to catch. I told myself I was projecting. I told myself everyone has bad weeks. I told myself relationships go through phases, and the discomfort I was feeling was just friction, the normal kind, not the warning kind. I was wrong. The second sign was harder to explain away. It required a more elaborate story from me, to myself, about why what I was observing was not what it looked like. I constructed that story carefully and I believed it, because I needed to believe it, because the alternative was that someone I had chosen to trust was not who I thought they were. By the third sign, I was no longer able to maintain the fiction. I remember sitting with the knowledge for about a day before I could even articulate what I knew. It sat in my chest like something heavy and cold. And then something shifted. I stopped grieving and started thinking. Instead of confronting directly, I quietly rerouted. Changed what needed to be changed, moved what needed to be moved, and let the absence speak for itself. I won't tell you it felt good in the moment, because it didn't, not exactly. What it felt like was clarity. Like a frequency I hadn't known I was missing had suddenly returned. The fallout was real. There were consequences, for both of us, though not equally. I had prepared for that. What I hadn't prepared for was how many people around me had sensed something was off and said nothing. That part stung in its own separate way. I genuinely don't know what Monica is doing now, and I've stopped being curious. That in itself felt like the real victory. Here's what I know now that I wish I'd known earlier. The instinct to explain away a bad feeling is not wisdom. It's not generosity. It's fear wearing the costume of open-mindedness. When something feels consistently wrong, it's usually because something consistently is. I am not a cautious person by nature, and I am not someone who holds grudges easily. But I have become someone who pays attention. Someone who gives trust in proportion to what's been earned. That's not cynicism. That's just honesty about how the world actually works. If you are in something right now that doesn't feel right, not dramatically wrong, just quietly, persistently, off, I want you to know that you are probably not paranoid. You're probably just the last person willing to admit what you already know. Trust that voice. It knows things. Thank you for being here. If any part of this story resonates with you, I want to hear it, drop it in the comments. I read every single one. Subscribe to the Confession Vault. I'm here every week with a new story. See you then.